Hello, Mackenzie.
Hi.
Skipping out on us today?
I slept late, so.
You're fine. Thank you for joining us. I was just telling folks in here that really we're going to start. We're not going to do anything else with the special senses thing, so you're great on that. And we're going to start a new section today on um, that I call skin and bone, which is pretty much epithelium and connective tissue, but this skin and bone just sounds better. And your notes are already up there. I got a lot of micrograph pictures, so check that out if you haven't already. And let's carry on.
Okay.
Questions before we get started? Everybody found the notes nice and pretty? Make yourself a copy. And one of the things that I felt like on the last couple of tests is folks haven't done as well because we're missing a very crucial step, in my opinion, in the note-taking process, and that is the literal taking of notes. The reason I didn't expect you guys to do that is because obviously, I got a lot of people watching videos and I'm not writing the things down and I can't spend all period going through the notes, so I have to do it a little bit faster. So with that being said, hearing the video, watching the video, and then looking at the notes, you need to add a third step, whether it's rewriting your notes, highlighting your notes while listening to the video again, researching beyond your notes, adding, things to your notes, something. You need to add that third step that we're missing by not taking your actual notes. Okay, so some of you guys have nailed that because you did really good on the test, but some other folks, maybe some folks watching it at home, might need that extra step. Make these notes mean something to you. The word we use in education is metacognition. Metacognition, and you guys know from the internet, meta, it just means this referencing itself. Metacognition is where you take the information and make it matter to you. Okay, so let's jump on this. Looking at epithelium. Right off the bat, you can look at the word and tell it probably means something to do with what? Epi. Outside, the surface. Okay, so epithelial tissue is just coverings. Anything that covers an outside, or remember we said we were hollow, covers the inside of a cavity. So epithelium is the edge of an organ or the surface or the lining of a hollow cavity. Okay. So the characteristics of epithelial tissue is that they are cells that are just piled on top of each other. If we skip down to the bottom, they're innervated but avascular. Innervated means that every cell has what? Nerve supply. Every cell has a little nerve supply going to it. Avascular, though, A means none. Vascular, on the right track. He said veins. So bigger than that. What is the cardiovascular system?
Like vessels of blood.
Exactly. Cardio means heart. Vascular means your vessels. Avascular means you have no vessels. Means you have no what supply? Blood supply. So the question is, how are you alive with no blood supply? Because what do you got to get from your blood? Talked about it on day one of here. What do you got to get? Every cell in your body has to get what from blood? Has to get oxygen. And so this problem is solved by this little bullet right here. The adjacent cells connected by desmosomes and tight junctions, these are pores where the cells actually share cytoplasm. So you don't have to get the blood supply to every cell, you just have to get the blood supply to the edge of the group of cells. And then that oxygen is then transferred from cytoplasm to cytoplasm throughout all of the cells because they're so closely packed together and you have these pores. Now that's good because you get some communication going through your entire layer of epithelium, but why can it be dangerous? Why can that be a problem, having a bunch of cells that share cytoplasm? All right, well, so let's look at the flip side. Let's look at parts of your body that do not share cytoplasm. Every nerve cell in your body would not dare share cytoplasm with any other nerve cell. And that's a good thing, because if my, I don't know, let's make a median nerve. My median nerve going to my pinky gets an infection, then I don't have to worry about that infection transferring to my spinal cord, my brain, or other nerves in my arm. Whereas if I get a epithelial cell infected, guess what? All the other epithelial cells around it are probably going to get infected because you're sharing that cytoplasm. So it's good because it's efficient, but it can be dangerous because when you get a skin infection or an epithelial infection, it can spread very, very easily. Okay? All right, so then underneath your epithelium, you have underlying connective tissue. We'll talk more about the connective tissue in the coming days. So connective tissue is just literally exactly what it sounds like. Tissue that's connected. Let me take a breath though. Do we know what the word tissue means? Go ahead, James.
It can be like tendons, neuroses.
You give me examples. I hear you. Okay, so let's start simple. Living thing, start and beginning is a what? Smallest living thing you can have is a what? A cell. Okay, a bunch of the same cells doing, a bunch of the same cells working together to do a similar job are, okay, let me skip a step. I'll skip a step. So cells are as simple as you can get. A bunch of cells working together to do a job. Heart, lungs, stomach, kidney. What do we call those things? Organs. But I skipped a step. Between cells and organs is tissue. Tissue is a bunch of the same cells working together. So in your heart, you have cardiac tissue that's making up the muscle of your heart. Now, the reason you don't say, the reason the heart's an organ and cardiac tissue is because there's stuff other than cardiac tissue. There's endocardium covering and things. There's epithelium. There's all kinds of other types of tissue that make up your heart. So tissue, when I use that word, I'm talking about a mass of cells that are the same. Rock and roll? Okay, so connective tissue is a mass of cells that are the same that is doing what job?
Connecting.
Holding things together, connecting. Okay, and we'll talk more about that tomorrow and in the coming days. So let's classify epithelium, because the cool thing about epithelium, a lot of times when we did nervous system, we talked about nodes of Ranvier and Nissl bodies and Broca's area and Wernicke's area. A lot of people who study things in nerves wanted to name things after themselves, and bless them. They deserve it. They discovered it, so good for them. The people who work with epithelium hooked us up because they created a system of naming the epithelium. Epithelium, just about all of them, have two names. The first name tells you how many layers, and the second name gives you the shape of the cell. So you can kind of, just by looking at the name, you can get an idea of what the epithelium looks like. The simplest epithelium is simple. How many layers do you think simple means? One layer. Squamous. Now the word squamous doesn't really tell you the shape, because to be honest with you, maybe look at squa and think square, but that's not exactly right. If you're thinking two-dimensional, yeah, flat squares, yeah, I'll buy that, and that might be where the word comes from, but I'll be honest with you. When I look at the word squamous, I think squished. Squished, flat, skinny cells, okay? One of the things I'm gonna ask you to do on the test, which I haven't really figured out how I'm gonna ask you to do it yet, because we're doing this whole digital computer test thing, but it's on my test, is I ask you to draw a quick little sketch of what this epithelium looks like. Now, obviously, I don't expect you to draw a micrograph of the lungs. Now, I'm telling you it's lungs because I gave you up here example lungs. Any guesses on how you could have told me that was lungs before I even said anything? What do you notice about that picture compared to the other pictures that I gave you? The majority of the pictures, what?
Have to mention.
Go ahead.
You have to mention.
Yeah, you're thinking too hard. You're being too fancy. Let's keep it simple. Keep it simple and think about art class. The majority of that image is what?
Lines.
Go ahead.
Lines.
Lines. How about that? Empty space. Why are the majority of your lungs empty space?
Air.
Yeah, because it's all about filling up air. Okay? And so you want your epithelia in your lungs to have this very, very flat shape because the majority of the job of your lungs is to exchange gases. You need the space to be able to do it. Okay? If I ask you to draw a simple squamous epithelium, this is what I would expect to see. And not crazy crooked line, you sticky computer. Oh my God. That's 3 simple squamous epithelial cells. Flat, 1 layer thick. Simple squamous epithelium. Now, you have to really zoom into this picture to be able to see them, but they're kind of wiggled around, 1 layer thick. You only want 1 layer because the job is to exchange gases. You want the wall to be thin. Rock and roll? All right. Let's carry on. All right, so we have simple squamous. The next one is simple cuboidal, which is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of simple squished cells, it's simple, which means 1 layer thick. Cuboidal, which means cube shaped. Cube shaped cells. And you'll find these guys in the kidney and the thyroid. Thyroid because you're excreting thyroxines, hormones. Kidney because you're filtering out the blood. Filtering out the blood, we want that nice thin wall to be able to get those waste products out nice, real quick. Cool? Same thing if I ask you to draw this guy. Just make sure you're looking at cubes. Just as tall as you are wide. Next guy is probably the most common of these 3, and that's simple columnar. Still 1 layer thick, but instead of squished cells or cube cells, you have tall, skinny cells. Simple columnar. Now, when you're looking at this micrograph here, you're only looking at from here up. This is connective tissue. This is your simple columnar cells. Okay? 1 layer, 1 cell thick, nice column-shaped cells, and you're talking about pretty much your whole digestive system, from your esophagus to your anus, and every layer in between. You're looking at simple columnar cells. So columnar because you want to have that protection to keep the stuff out, and the stuff in. Simple though, because the job of your digestive system, when you really break it down, is to do what? Don't say digest, because that's part of it. But what's the main job of your digestive system? That's the digest part. But why do you want to break down the food? So you can do what to it? No, that's the waste after. Let's go in the middle. We've got the beginning, which is breaking down the food. We got the end, which is getting rid of your waste. In the middle, you want to absorb the nutrients. That's why you only want 1 cell thick. You want to be able to get those nutrients into your bloodstream. Get that glucose into your bloodstream. Okay? So simple columnar, 1 cell thick, column-shaped cells. Classic example is the digestive system. Next one's kind of strange. And it's got a prefix that hopefully means something to you. It's 1 big stinking word, but that prefix right there, pseudo. What's pseudo mean?
Fake.
Fake, false. What's a pseudonym? Give me an example.
Mark Twain.
Mark Twain is a pseudonym. What was the man's real name?
I don't know.
Ah, I got you. Samuel Clemens. Okay, let's talk about one we know. Okay. Calvin Brodus is the man's real name. The pseudonym is. Ooh. I stumped my folks in class. Mackenzie, let them know. Calvin Brodus is the real name. The pseudonym is Snoop Dogg. Okay? And so pseudo just means fake. So now we know what the fake part is. Now look at this part. Stratified. Stratified is going to be opposite from what word that we've used already before?
Right.
Nah. What part of this word is stratified going to be opposite from? There's only two parts to the word. What did simple mean? In this context, what did simple mean? Say it loud.
One.
One cell thick. So the opposite will be stratified, which is
Multiple cells.
more than one cell thick. Now, if stratified means more than one cell thick, and pseudo means fake, pseudostratified looks like it's more than one cell thick, but actually isn't. That makes sense? So pseudostratified, look at your picture here. So just like the picture above, the only thing I care about is from that line up. Okay? And if you look at that cell and just give it a quick glance, it looks like that you have this cell above this cell, right? But what's actually happening is that every one of these cells touches the top and the bottom. They just kind of separate out to look like there's more than one layer. So every cell touches the top and the bottom, they just spread out to look like there's more than one layer. Too bad. I already stole it. All right. All right. Have a great day, buddy. All right. But so every single one of these cells touches the bottom, which is called the basement membrane, and the extracellular space up here at the top. It looks like, because they're squished in different ways, that they're not, but every single one of them touches the top and the bottom, so it really is still only one cell thick. And you get this wavy shape. You get this wavy shape that makes it look like it's multiple layers, but it's actually not. The only real place, that's actually a couple places, but the main place you find this is in the trachea. And if you look up here, the top of this dark line is the top of the cell. And above that is what you learn in biology class, that little hair-like extensions that can come off of cells is your cilia. Now in biology class, you might have learned about like the paramecium that had the cilia. And it would use those cilia to swim around, okay? Well, in your body, these pseudostratified epithelia use the cilia instead to sweep all of the things out. So you breathe in something you shouldn't breathe in, all these little hairs grab it and start throwing it out. It's what makes you sneeze. It's what makes you tickle when you're drinking something that goes down the wrong hole. That's what that feeling that you're getting is, all of these cilia saying, get out, get out, get out. Okay? So pseudostratified epithelium looks like it's multiple layers, but isn't really multiple layers. Let's carry on. Next up, we had simple squamous, which was in the lungs. Stratified squamous, the example is the skin. So you get multiple layers of these flat, squished cells. Now, one of the things that's interesting is most of the time with stratified squamous is they actually change as they go from the bottom to the top. On the bottom, they look more cuboidal, and on top, they look more squished. And you actually see this when you look at the cells in the epidermis. We're going to talk about this model a lot. I can put it on the little picture here. We're going to talk about this model a lot in class. The bottom of the epidermis has like almost cuboidal cells, but by the time they get to the top, they're squished down and they're flat and they're true squamous cells. And so you see that transition as you go from the bottom to the top. Stratified squamous, multiple layers, squamous cells, skin's your example. All right, stratified cuboidal. Stratified cuboidal is getting a little bit more rare. There's not much of this in the body at all. Sweat glands, mammary glands, your large glands is where you see the stratified cuboidal cells. Multiple layers of cuboid cells. Not really much else to say about that. And probably your least, your rarest cells, and it actually took me a long time to find a good picture that I liked, and I'm still not super happy with this picture, but one of the rarest types of epithelium in the body is stratified columnar, multiple columns, and really the only place that you can count on finding it is in the male urethra. Why the male but not the female? First off, what is urethra? What did you say? I didn't hear you. No, that's something. That's the voice box, the larynx, things like that. Okay. Urethra sounds like what word? Urine. It's how the urethra is the tube that takes urine from the bladder to outside. Why is the male urethra different than the female urethra?
Because they can do things.
Yes, that's true, but let's not worry about the second thing right now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
From a strictly anatomical viewpoint, not a physiological viewpoint, from a strictly structural difference, what's making the male urethra different than the female urethra? I'm going to make you say it. Yeah, you got to go through the penis. Okay? The female urethra, you leave the bladder, bam, you're out. Female urethra is a few centimeters long. Male urethra, depending on who you ask, can be a certain amount of centimeters long. Okay? So male urethra got a lot more distance, and like James said, you have more things that have to go on in the male urethra. And it's got to be a little bit more structurally sound because it's exposed. Not exposed to the outside world, but exposed to outside of the body. If the male urethra had the structure of the female urethra, any little damage to the penis would be incredibly damaging to the urethra. And you have all kinds of urethral problems with just simple, movement of the penis. Whereas you need that multiple layer to protect from the for lack of a better word, the trauma that the penis must go through on a daily basis. Bless that penis's heart. All right, so multiple layers, column-shaped cells, male urethra. Last one, I think, yeah. The last one is transitional epithelium. Now notice this doesn't have two names. That even kind of have two names. Transitional epithelium can look like lots of different things. First off, it does have multiple layers, so you could technically call it stratified transitional, I guess, if you wanted to, but they just call it transitional epithelium. But it can look squamous to columnar and everything in between. I like this picture. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit so we can see a little bit better. I like this picture because it actually shows you the change. In the top picture, you're getting more columnar cells. These cells are kind of tall and skinny, whereas in the bottom picture, they get short and fat. So we're talking about your bladder here. The bladder needs to be able to stretch. Sometimes you need your bladder to be able to accommodate lots of fluid, and then when it's time to release your bladder, you want your bladder to be able to change shape a little bit. That's what happens with transitional epithelium. Now, whenever I brought this up before, I would always ask, what part of your body do you think needs to be able to stretch like this? And obviously, you guys have a spoiler alert because there it is, bladder. But I would always have students say, stomach. Stomach actually doesn't have transitional epithelium. The stomach just straight up has simple columnar epithelium. So how do you think the stomach stretches if it doesn't stretch like this? It stretches more macroscopically. The bladder stretches microscopically. The cells actually change. The stomach stretches macroscopically, and when your stomach is empty, it's a whole bunch of curves, and when your stomach is full, it flattens out. Simple as that. It's called rugae, the different little wiggles in your stomach. All right, rocking or no? Questions on epithelium? Those are your different types.
I have a question.
Go ahead, man.
Was the first one the pleura of the lungs?
The first one is the alveola of the lungs. The first picture is inside the lungs, in the alveola. Because if it was pleura, it would just be, pleura is probably stratified squamous epithelium, because you need those multiple layers. I might be wrong, but I would think that pleura would need multiple layers. Okay, because it would need more than be than 1 cell thick. 1 cell thick pleura wouldn't really help you that much. You just not right through it. Okay, but again, if you find that pleura is actually simple squamous, be like, hey, Tyler, look, you're wrong, and then I'll be like, okay, right and wrong. Most pleura, most coverings are going to be stratified squamous. All right, rock and roll. It would look like that, but without this layer.
What about greater omentum? Does that mean?
Greater omentum, with the apron of your abdomen, I would still think would be. I'm not sure that would classify as epithelium. I don't know, because it's got fat all mixed in it and stuff.
Yeah. Probably.
I don't know. That's a special thing. Jumping the gun, you man, good job. All right, carrying on. So we did stratified columnar, we did transitional. Let's go. All right, looking at different types of epithelium, and then we'll stop there for today. Glandular epithelia. Glandular epithelia, you have 2 different types of glands. You have endocrine glands and exocrine glands. It's easy to remember because your endocrine system is your endocrine glands, which controls your endocrine system. What does your endocrine system do for you? My daughter's 12 years old. Her endocrine system's going crazy. Exactly. Y'all with me? Endocrine system's all about hormones. Endocrine glands release hormones. We're talking your pituitary gland, your thyroid, your thymus even. All of these guys secreting hormones into your blood or into your lymph. They don't have a duct. They don't have a tube. Whereas exocrine glands, whoa, baby. Exocrine glands have ducts. They open up onto a surface. They're going to release onto a surface or into a cavity. Example, there's goblet cells. Now, I want to draw you a quick picture of goblet cells because I wasn't happy with my picture that I had. So you find goblet cells in the stomach. And so what you have simple columnar epithelium in the stomach. So if I was able to take a quick slice of stomach and look at it under a microscope, it would look kind of like this. And I'll even draw some nuclei for you. Obviously not as straight lines, but you get the idea, okay? Now, what's happening in the stomach? We store food and we break it down, like Shamir was saying earlier. How? We shoot acid at it like crazy. It's one of the most acidic things. If I wanted to find the strongest acid in this room without going into the chemical closet, the best way to do it would be to cut one of us open and go in the stomach. We're looking at like pH 2 or 3 in the stomach. Very strong acid. If you don't believe it's very strong acid, how does it feel when you throw up? Burns, doesn't it? It burns because it's the acid coming from your stomach. Okay? So you have this acid in your stomach that's breaking down food. Now, most of the food you eat is what? Big picture. Big picture. Food is what? Give me an example. Give me some food. An apple. Apple comes from an apple tree. It's a what? What do you say? It's a fruit. You're going to be out when I wanted to go though. It's a what type of organism? It's a plant. Give me something else you could eat. A cow is a animal. Everything you eat is a what? A living organism, exactly. Everything you eat is a living organism. And we said earlier, living organisms are made of carbon. Well, we didn't say that earlier. What did we say earlier? It's the simplest thing. It could be a living organism. Cells. Now, hold up. So you're telling me that my stomach is shooting acid at things made of cells to break those cells apart, but at the same time, the wall of that organ that I'm talking about is made of cells. So the question is, why doesn't the stomach break itself apart? Does that make sense? If your stomach is designed to break apart cells, and yet the wall of your stomach is made of cells, then why doesn't your stomach break yourself apart? And the answer is right here, goblet cells. Most cells in your stomach are nice columnar cells that are shooting out hydrochloric acid like crazy. Gastric juice, hydrochloric acid, bam, shooting it out as fast as they can go. But every once in a while, one of your stomach cells, instead of shooting out hydrochloric acid, is going to be a goblet cell. And it's shaped like this. See why it's called a goblet cell? The top of it looks like a goblet. Okay? So it's called a goblet cell because it looks like that. And instead of shooting out hydrochloric acid, it fills up this goblet with mucus. And it keeps producing that mucus over and over again, and eventually that mucus is going to spill out onto the rest of the cells. And so the acid in your stomach, rather than eating the cells, is going to eat the mucus. And that's wonderful as long as your goblet cell keeps working, because as the mucus goes away, it's replaced by the goblet cells. And so as long as your goblet cells are working appropriately, you're never eating your stomach cells. What do you call it if you do eat your stomach cells? Form of what? Sometimes it can bleed in your stomach. It can be very, very painful. You get an ulcer, where your stomach cells get eaten up and you have scar tissue in your stomach because either your goblet cells aren't working right, or you're making too much hydrochloric acid, or lots of other reasons, or you have some type of infection. So goblet cells, these are exocrine glands where they just have a duct where the fluid just kind of spills out onto the surface. Cool? All right, guys, we'll stop there for today. Connective tissue tomorrow. And we use in that 30 minutes or so to start staying. Any questions, Mackenzie, before I let you go?
No, I don't have any questions.
Have a great day, Sunshine. Thank you for joining us.
You too. Thank you.